The day of Isabella Vaughn's funeral dawned overcast, as though the skies themselves mourned her passing. A solemn crowd gathered at the grand cathedral in the heart of the city. Celebrities, politicians, and business magnates from every corner of the globe flew in to pay their respects to the woman who had built an empire from nothing. The hush that fell over the crowd was broken only by the whisper of designer shoes against marble floors and the gentle hum of mourners expressing quiet condolences. Daniel Vaughn, dressed in a crisp black suit, walked to the front pew, sporting a facade of sorrow. His face was pale, lips pressed into a tight line. Observers saw a grieving widower. Yet behind those eyes, a gleam of excitement sparked. He found himself thinking not of loss, but of the inheritance soon to be his. His fingers trembled, but not from grief. They trembled from anticipation of the power and wealth he believed was only hours away. He spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Jonathan Pierce, Isabella's longtime lawyer, looked directly at him. Daniel stiffened under that gaze. Jonathan was no stranger to Daniel's ambition. The man was keenly aware of every nuance that ever passed between the Vaughns. But Daniel refused to appear rattled. He offered the lawyer a curt nod, then turned back to the ornate coffin draped in white lilies. As the priest began the eulogy, recounting Isabella's humble beginnings and meteoric rise, Daniel allowed himself a fleeting smile. He slipped a quick glance at the back of the cathedral, where Madison Hale, his mistress, stood in a discreet black dress. She gave him a small, knowing smirk. They both believed this funeral was but a prelude to their lavish future. When the final prayer concluded and the casket was carried out under the mournful toll of bells, Daniel placed a single rose on the gleaming wood. A tear slid down his cheek for the cameras to see. In his mind, though, he whispered, "Goodbye, Isabella. Thank you for everything you built and everything I'm about to take." After the service, a private reception was held in the courtyard behind the cathedral. Servers moved soundlessly, offering silver trays of champagne and delicate canapes to the somber gathering. Mourners talked in hushed voices about Isabella's brilliance, her kindness, her philanthropy. Daniel slipped away from the throng to find Madison loitering by a tall marble statue of an angel. He gently touched her elbow. "Not here," he muttered under his breath, glancing around to ensure no prying eyes were fixed on them. Madison gave him an impish grin. "Everyone's too busy crying over your wife," she whispered back. "But fine, I'll keep my distance until it's our turn to celebrate." She turned her eyes to the sky, as if searching for a private sign that Isabella's soul had truly departed. Underneath that silent moment, her thoughts raced with visions of designer houses, fast cars, and an opulent life that waited just beyond this final formality. In the corner of the courtyard, Jonathan Pierce observed them. His watchful stare gave nothing away, but he noted every twitch, every flicker of smile on Daniel's face. Piercing eyes missed no detail, and Jonathan was no fool. He suspected that Daniel's show of grief was layered with opportunism. Next to him stood a cluster of associates from Isabella's corporation, each trying to figure out where they might stand now that the queen of their empire was gone. As the afternoon wore on, clouds drifted across the sun, and the autumn breeze rattled the leaves from the courtyard's oaks. Guests began filtering out, murmuring final words of sympathy. Madison gave Daniel a parting glance, a wordless promise of their upcoming windfall. Daniel returned her smile, emboldened by the thought of soon claiming his wife's fortune. He adjusted his tie, smoothing down his suit jacket, and silently rehearsed how he would act surprised and humbled when he officially received the billions. If Jonathan Pierce had any suspicions, Daniel would brush them aside. As far as everyone else was concerned, Isabella Vaughn's empire was about to pass seamlessly into Daniel's hands. In the days following the funeral, Daniel strode into the towering glass building that housed Vaughn Industries with an air of confidence. Employees offered subdued greetings, still grieving the death of their founder. As he stepped off the elevator onto the executive floor, he allowed himself a satisfied grin at the sleek offices, the hum of productivity, and the quiet reverence people had shown Isabella in life. All of this, now mine, he thought. He sat down in the CEO's chair, Isabella's old desk behind him, a testament to her many years of relentless work. Large glass windows overlooked the city skyline, a view she used to love gazing upon during her late-night brainstorming sessions. Daniel took a moment to spin around in the chair, letting the opulent view soak in. Suddenly, a gentle knock sounded. "Mr. Vaughn," came a soft voice. "I'm so sorry to disturb you." It was a junior executive. The young man's nervous energy filled the room. "We just want to confirm the date for the official board meeting regarding the new leadership structure." "Of course," Daniel replied smoothly. "Let's set it for next week. We have to make everything official, don't we?" The young man nodded. "Yes, sir. The board is anxious to proceed." As Daniel dismissed him, he flipped through some documents left behind in Isabella's office. They were full of complex business negotiations, philanthropic initiatives, and expansion strategies. Isabella had always been one step ahead. She had guided her company from a fledgling startup to a global powerhouse. It was a testament to her brilliance, and he mused, a treasure trove for him to exploit. Over the next few hours, Daniel summoned various department heads for short, polite meetings. He said all the right things. "We'll honor Isabella's vision. We'll continue her philanthropic endeavors." But inside, he was already plotting to siphon large sums into personal ventures, ones that he would share with Madison. "This empire," he told himself, "will be shaped according to my desires, not a dead woman's memory." He leaned back in Isabella's chair, eyes drifting to a framed photograph on the desk, Isabella standing at a construction site, beaming with pride in a hard hat. Seeing her so radiant, Daniel felt a twinge of resentment. "She always thought she was better than me." The photograph seemed to silently mock him. Setting it face down, he muttered, "Well, we'll see who has the last laugh." Jonathan Pierce's office exuded an air of subdued power. Tasteful mahogany furniture, a tall bookshelf lined with law tomes, and an impeccably organized desk showcased the lawyer's meticulous nature. When Daniel arrived for an appointment, Jonathan rose and offered a polite but distant handshake. "Mr. Vaughn," he said, motioning for Daniel to sit. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Daniel tried to mask his impatience. "Let's get to the important part. I assume Isabella's will is straightforward, yes? I inherit everything, her personal assets, her shares in the company, property, the works." Jonathan's lips curved into a small smile. "It's never quite that simple, Mr. Vaughn." Isabella was a complex individual. She had her reasons for doing things in a meticulous way. "Reasons?" Daniel repeated, eyes narrowing. "I'm her husband." "Legally." Jonathan cleared his throat. Yes. She left a primary document that states certain conditions. But due to the size of the estate, there's a process we need to follow. There are formalities, verifying the will, dealing with the board, establishing the trust distributions. This can't be rushed. Rushed? Daniel echoed with a scoff. "Isn't there a reading of the will we can finalize right away?" Jonathan paused. "We'll hold an initial reading in 3 days for the immediate beneficiaries. After that, there may be subsequent proceedings if additional documents arise." Daniel's gaze flickered with irritation. "Fine. 3 days," he muttered. "Just make sure it's done promptly. I have a corporation to run." As Daniel left, Jonathan leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. He looked at the door Daniel had just exited, a contemplative expression on his face. Yes, it was clear that Daniel Vaughn was eager, too eager. Jonathan opened his desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope with Isabella's handwriting. "We'll see," he whispered, "if your bravado holds when the truth is revealed." A black SUV pulled up to the Vaughn family mausoleum later that afternoon, the engine idling. Out stepped a slight figure with raven hair and large sunglasses, Eva Vaughn. The daughter of Isabella Vaughn, she had been living abroad for years, estranged from both her mother and stepfather. Rumors whispered that she and Isabella had a falling out over personal matters. Some said Eva resented her mother's ironclad devotion to her empire. Others said it was the complexities of an overbearing family legacy. Either way, she had stayed away. Clutching a small bouquet of white roses, Eva walked into the cemetery. Though she had arrived too late for the official funeral, she wanted a private moment to pay her respects. She stood before the newly placed gravestone, reading the inscription. Here lies Isabella Vaughn, a visionary beyond her time. Eva felt tears threaten as she sank to her knees, placing the roses gently on the grass. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered. I know it's been a long time. I wish I had come back sooner. A discreet cough made her spin around. Jonathan Pierce was there, hands clasped. Miss Vaughn, he greeted softly, I'm glad you came. Eva nodded, removing her sunglasses. Is it true what I've read? She was just gone so suddenly. Jonathan sighed. A sudden heart complication. The doctors tried everything. Her jaw tensed as she listened. So many things she regretted. Missed calls, unopened letters. Yet even so, she felt a flicker of uncertainty. Does Daniel know I'm here? She asked. Not yet, Jonathan replied. But he'll find out soon enough. Eva took a deep breath. She wasn't entirely sure she wanted a confrontation with her stepfather. She had never liked him, even as a teenager. Let him find out, she said at last, voice trembling but resolute. I came to pay my respects and maybe see what's left of my mother's empire. If there's anything I can do to honor her memory, I will. Jonathan studied her carefully. Just be prepared. There's much you don't know about the estate and the secrets your mother kept to safeguard it. Eva bent down, brushing leaves from the headstone. I'm not here for money, she murmured. I just wish I'd had a chance to say goodbye. 3 days later, the key players convened in a tasteful boardroom within Jonathan Pierce's legal firm. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a bustling city street below. Daniel sat at the polished table with a confident air, flipping through his phone as if bored by the formalities. Madison, seated next to him, observed the plush decor with undisguised curiosity. A few of Isabella's closest advisors lined the walls, whispering among themselves. At precisely 9 o'clock, Jonathan Pierce entered with a leather-bound folder. He laid it gently on the table and cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. We're here to begin the official reading of Isabella Vaughn's last will and testament. Daniel smirked. Let's get on with it then. Jonathan regarded him briefly before beginning. I, Isabella Vaughn, being of sound mind, hereby direct that upon my death, the following be enacted. He paused, letting the legal language fill the silent room. First, the distribution of personal items and properties. Madison leaned forward, eyes shining. Daniel glanced her way, giving a subtle nod of reassurance. His leg bounced beneath the table with impatience. And her primary residence. Should Mr. Daniel Vaughn wish to reside there, that is permitted for the interim. However, transfer of the property will only be finalized upon further review of the trust conditions. A slight flicker of annoyance passed across Daniel's face, but he quickly masked it. Jonathan turned a page, continuing. We will pause here and schedule a follow-up session in 1 week to address the full scope of Isabella's holdings, including Vaughn Industries and any associated trust accounts. Today's reading is only preliminary. Wait, what? Daniel sputtered. You mean that's it? There's more? Jonathan met Daniel's gaze without flinching. Yes! The second portion of the will is sealed, per Isabella's instructions. It can only be opened under specific conditions. Madison frowned, her voice betraying her frustration. And what conditions are those? Jonathan's expression remained neutral. We will discuss that at the next session. Until then, business operations remain in place and Mr. Vaughn continues in a caretaker capacity. Daniel forced a smile, trying not to let his frustration show. Inside, he seethed. Why the delay? He wanted it all now. Still, he played along. Fine. Next week, then. As the room cleared, Daniel clenched his jaw. This is ridiculous, he hissed to Madison once they were alone. She's even controlling things from the grave. Madison looped an arm through his. Don't let it get to you. Another week and you'll have everything. Yet, they both felt a tiny seed of dread, as though Isabella's spirit lingered in the corners, orchestrating events beyond the grave. A few evenings later, Daniel returned home to the Vaughn estate, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city. He was greeted by echoing hallways and silent staff, the hush of grief still palpable. In the dimly lit study, he found a single envelope on the large mahogany desk. His name was written in Isabella's elegant script. Curiosity piqued, he opened it. Inside, a single line read, "A fool counts his winnings before the game is over." He stared at it, heartbeat skittering. What the he began, feeling a flash of anger. Was this some kind of twisted joke? He slammed the note on the desk. Isabella might be dead, but he felt her presence mocking him. He balled the note in his fist and tossed it into the fireplace, watching it curl and blacken in the flames. Moments later, the ring of his phone cut through the tense silence. It was Madison. "Hey," she purred. "Did you get that weird note from your wife's lawyer?" He exhaled slowly. "You too, huh?" "Yeah." Mine said, "Those who gloat shall eat their words." Dramatic, but definitely from Isabella. Maybe Jonathan sent it on her behalf. Daniel gripped the phone tighter. "She's trying to unsettle us. Probably some stunt to keep us from making a scene before the next reading. Don't worry." Yet as he ended the call, Daniel couldn't shake the prickle of unease along his spine. For years, he had underestimated Isabella's cunning. Even in death, she continued to remind him that she had always been 2 steps ahead. Madison's apartment was modest, but she lived with an air of entitlement that belied her surroundings. As she lounged on the couch, flipping through glossy real estate magazines, she sipped champagne as if celebrating a done deal. Vibrant pictures of sprawling estates and luxurious penthouses caught her eye. "This one has a pool on the rooftop," she cooed, snapping a photo on her phone. She sent it to Daniel with a message. "We'll buy one with a bigger pool, right?" Moments later, her phone chimed. Daniel's response read, "Whatever you want, babe." Soon, she giggled, tossing the magazine aside. "I'm done waiting tables, done with second-hand furniture," she said aloud to the empty room. She pictured herself walking across marble floors in designer heels. She imagined paparazzi capturing her every move, labeling her the new queen of the Vaughn Empire. To solidify her dream, she opened her laptop and began browsing private jet listings. She even called a realtor and scheduled viewings for upscale properties, introducing herself as a future billionaire's wife. The realtor's polite interest only fueled her delusions of grandeur. Yet beneath her excitement, she couldn't fully ignore the cryptic letters from Isabella's estate. She told herself it was just part of the legal hoops. Soon enough, Daniel would sign the final documents, and their new life would begin. Just a little longer, she murmured to herself, raising her champagne flute in a private toast. And no one can stop us. A week later, the second meeting for the will reading was postponed unexpectedly. Jonathan Pierce sent a brief message to all concerned parties. Urgent matter of estate requires a short postponement. New date to follow. Daniel received the text during a board meeting at Vaughn Industries. It took all his self-control not to slam his phone onto the table in front of the wide-eyed executives. His voice was tight as he addressed them. "There's been a delay. We'll continue with normal operations until further notice." As he left the boardroom, he dialed Jonathan's number. "Pierce, what's going on?" he demanded the moment the lawyer answered. "Is this another one of Isabella's games?" Jonathan's tone was maddeningly composed. "As I said, there are additional estate considerations that need resolving. It's been weeks." Daniel hissed into the phone. "I'm the rightful heir. Isn't that enough for you?" Jonathan paused. "Patience, Mr. Vaughn. I'm not at liberty to discuss details yet. But trust me when I say the estate is more complicated than even you realize." Daniel ended the call with a roar of frustration. He could feel the board members peeking out of the conference room, no doubt curious about their new leader's temper. He forced himself to calm down, adjusting his tie and smoothing back his hair. A thought struck him. Could Isabella have set up additional trusts or conditions that might threaten my claim? The possibility gnawed at him. He paced his office, concocting ways to force Jonathan to speed things up. But deep down, he realized he might have underestimated his wife's final moves. Isabella had always been cunning, always thrived in strategic negotiations. And if she wanted to haunt him from beyond the grave, she had the means and the foresight to do it right. Late that evening, after everyone had left Vaughn Industries, Jonathan Pierce slipped into the CEO's old office. He moved quietly, scanning the dimly lit space. He paused by the large painting of Isabella that hung on the wall. She wore an enigmatic smile, as if guarding a secret. Jonathan exhaled slowly, tapping the code to unlock a hidden panel behind the bookshelf. Inside lay a small safe. From it, he extracted a sealed envelope labeled, "Last Will and Testament of Isabella Vaughn, Supplemental." He held it as though it were something sacred. Isabella had confided in him months ago. She suspected that Daniel might try to claim everything upon her death, disregarding her final wishes. Hence, she had devised a plan, a second will that superseded the first, to be revealed only after certain conditions were met. Turning the envelope in his hands, Jonathan recalled her instructions. When the time comes, read this only in the presence of all relevant parties, including Eva. Yes, Eva Vaughn was pivotal. As far as Daniel was concerned, Eva was just a distant, estranged daughter. But Isabella's trust in her was unwavering. Jonathan replaced the envelope, locked the panel, and straightened his tie. Soon, he whispered, glancing up at Isabella's portrait. Her painted eyes seemed to sparkle in the faint light. Soon, your final wish will be carried out. The rescheduled meeting took place on a crisp morning in the same boardroom. Everyone wore tense expressions, aware that something monumental was about to unfold. Daniel tapped his foot impatiently, unable to hide his annoyance. Madison, seated beside him, offered a reassuring squeeze of his hand. Across the table sat Eva Vaughn, quiet but composed. Jonathan Pierce cleared his throat and lifted a new envelope, different from the one previously used. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice echoing in the hushed room. "This is a supplemental will that Isabella Vaughn signed and authorized months before her passing. It supersedes all earlier documents." Daniel's eyes widened. "Supersedes." Jonathan read the opening lines. "I, Isabella Vaughn, do hereby declare that this revised will is my true and final statement regarding the distribution of my estate. Any prior will, partially or fully, is to be considered void in matters of conflict." The air thickened with tension. Daniel's complexion turned ashen. He swallowed hard, but tried to maintain composure. "Get to the point," he demanded. Jonathan's gaze flickered toward Eva, then back to the document. "According to this supplemental will, the entirety of Isabella's fortune, including her controlling shares in Vaughn Industries and all associated trust accounts, is bequeathed to her daughter, Eva Vaughn." A stunned silence followed. Madison's jaw dropped. Daniel's eyes blazed with fury. "That's impossible," he sputtered. "I'm her husband. How could she just?" Jonathan set the document down, his voice calm. "Isabella's attorneys have ensured the validity of this will. It's legally binding, Mr. Vaughn." Eva's face reflected mingled shock and heartbreak. She had anticipated something, but not this complete transfer. She whispered, "Mom, what did you do?" Madison glanced at Daniel in horror, her dream of wealth crumbling. Daniel lunged forward in his seat, fists clenched. "There must be a mistake. I demand a thorough investigation. This can't be legal." Jonathan offered a composed smile. "You're welcome to contest it, but Isabella was quite thorough. Unless you have evidence proving otherwise, this stands." Effective immediately, Eva Vaughn is the primary beneficiary. Chapter 12. The True Heir. The room erupted in a cacophony of questions and murmurs. Eva Vaughn sat frozen in her chair, overwhelmed by the sudden reality that the entire Vaughn empire now rested on her shoulders. Daniel turned on her, rage flashing in his eyes. "You knew about this," he spat accusingly. Eva blinked, taken aback. "I did not. I swear, I had no idea what my mother planned." Jonathan intervened, gesturing for calm. "Miss Vaughn arrived recently, after the funeral. She was not privy to Isabella's legal strategy." Board members who had come to observe the proceedings exchanged cautious glances. One or two timidly asked Eva if she intended to keep them on board. Another executive, a middle-aged woman, gently suggested they adjourn for the day. The meeting had become emotionally charged beyond salvage. Eva nodded numbly. Yes, let's adjourn. I need time to process all of this. Before anyone could argue, she rose and hurried out, tears threatening to fall. Jonathan quickly gathered the documents, leaving Daniel and Madison in the boardroom with the stunned directors. As soon as the door shut behind them, Daniel let out a strangled roar and slammed his fist on the table. She can't do this to me, he bellowed. After everything I did. One by one, the onlookers slipped away, unsure how to handle his outburst. Madison stood, face pale. Daniel, what are we going to do? He pressed shaking hands against his temples. There must be a loophole. I'm her husband. I won't let some estranged daughter waltz in and snatch what's mine. But a faint, lingering memory of Isabella's triumphant smirk flickered through his mind. She had always been a brilliant strategist. Now, from beyond the grave, she had outplayed him completely. Madison tried to compose herself in the private lounge near the boardroom, but she felt like she was drowning in shock. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She had already told her friends she was about to become the lady of a fortune. She had promised gifts, hinted at glamorous vacations, even bragged about a potential wedding date once Daniel's mourning period was properly observed. Now, it all seemed to be imploding. She could hear Daniel in the hallway, raging at his phone, likely calling lawyers or confidants to see if the will could be contested. She recalled the cryptic note from Isabella, "Those who gloat shall eat their words." It suddenly felt painfully apt. When Daniel stormed into the lounge, she rushed to him. "Okay," she hissed. "Is there a way to fix this? Could Isabella have forged something? Or manipulated the legal system?" He glared at her. She had a net of lawyers. She was always 2 steps ahead. She must have planned this for a while. Madison's anxiety spiked. "So what do we do?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "I don't know yet, but I'm not giving up." She latched onto his arm. "You promised me a life of luxury, Daniel. You told me you had it all under control." He pulled away from her grasp. "This is bigger than you think. If I don't find a loophole, we're finished. Everything is in Eva's hands now." The admission spilled from his lips like a curse. Madison's eyes shone with tears. This wasn't how the story was supposed to end. He promised me millions. Maybe billions. But her pleas only made Daniel's temper flare. He stomped from the room without further explanation, leaving Madison shaken and afraid that her carefully constructed fantasy might be nothing but a castle of sand. Eva Vaughn stood in the CEO's office, scanning the walls of glass that offered a view of the city. She had spent the morning meeting with some of her mother's senior executives, who were all keen to understand what direction she might take. At 27, Eva felt entirely unprepared for such responsibility. Her mother's shadow loomed over every decision. Jonathan Pierce joined her, offering a gentle nod. "You're handling this better than most would," he remarked. She gave a shaky laugh. "Am I? It feels like I'm stepping into shoes far too big to fill." He motioned toward the desk. "Isabella believed in you. She knew you had a good heart, and that's why she wanted you to inherit everything, so you could protect her life's work from the wrong hands." Eva slid into the leather chair, the same chair Daniel had occupied days before. "What about Daniel? He's not just going to vanish." Jonathan's expression darkened slightly. "He's likely to contest the will. But Isabella's legal team was thorough. He'll have a difficult time overturning it. What should I do about him now that I have controlling shares? Should I push him out?" she asked hesitantly. "That's your call. He currently holds no real power here. Legally, you could remove him from any interim role." Eva took a moment, remembering the many times she had witnessed Daniel undermining her mother, mocking her ambitions behind her back. She recalled the final argument she had with Isabella, partly fueled by Daniel's manipulations. Slowly, she exhaled. "Then he's out," she said quietly. "Effective immediately." Jonathan nodded. "I'll arrange it. It's exactly what your mother intended." A moment of silent resolve passed. Eva might not have asked for this, but now that it was hers, she would honor Isabella's faith in her. News spread like wildfire. Eva Vaughn was the new head of Vaughn Industries, and Daniel Vaughn had been completely cut out. When Daniel received the official notice, a short email delivered by the legal department, he felt his vision blur with anger. He raced to the building, ignoring the security guard's attempt to stop him in the lobby. He reached the executive floor, only to find his access card no longer worked. Furious, he pounded on the locked doors until 2 uniformed guards appeared, ordering him to leave. "This is my company," he shouted, voice echoing down the marble corridor. One guard spoke calmly, "Sir, you've been removed from the authorized list. Please don't make this difficult." Daniel's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. "Who did this?" "Ms. Eva Vaughn. She's the acting CEO." He let out a hollow, humorless laugh. "She's just a kid who's been gone for years. She doesn't even know how to run this place." The guards didn't respond. They simply watched him with stoic composure. Feeling eyes on him from every corner, Daniel finally spun away, shoulders tense. He felt humiliated, betrayed. This was supposed to be mine, he thought, an echo of heartbreak resonating in his mind. "Isabella, how could you do this to me?" As he stormed out of the building, reporters swarmed him. Microphones and cameras thrust forward, capturing his scowl. "Mr. Vaughn, is it true you've been disinherited?" one shouted. Another asked, "What's your comment on Eva Vaughn's rise?" He shoved past them, bitterness clawing at his throat. There, on the street, the reality finally sank in. His illusions of vast wealth and power had just crumbled into dust. 3 days later, Daniel paced around the mansion that was once bustling with maids, caterers, and visitors. Now it felt cavernous and empty. An uneasy hush filled every hallway. He was about to pour himself a stiff drink when the doorbell rang. He opened the grand door to find Jonathan Pierce standing on the threshold, holding an envelope. "Mr. Vaughn," the lawyer began formally, stepping inside at Daniel's brusque gesture. "I'm sure you know how unwelcome you are," Daniel snapped. "But if you're here to deliver more bad news, spare me." Jonathan let out a quiet sigh. "It's from Isabella," he said, handing over the envelope. "Part of her final instructions. She wanted me to deliver this personally once everything was settled." Daniel snatched the envelope and tore it open. The letter read, "Daniel, if you are reading this, then my plan has succeeded. I know you never cared for me the way a husband should. I was your stepping stone, nothing more. But I built my empire with my own hands, and I refuse to let you profit from deceit. You were never my equal. You were my mistake. Isabella." A flush crawled up Daniel's neck. His eyes burned with rage and humiliation. He tore the letter in half, then in half again, throwing the pieces to the floor. "She dares," he hissed. Jonathan watched calmly. "She was aware of your resentment. She just didn't let on." "Get out," Daniel growled, voice trembling with barely contained fury. He refused to meet Jonathan's gaze, focusing instead on the shredded paper at his feet. Jonathan gave him a final look of pity before turning away. In that letter's simple words, Isabella had shattered Daniel's last shred of pride. There was no inheritance, no empire, only the bitter taste of defeat. Daniel's humiliation worsened when the media got wind of the second will and Isabella's scathing letter. A tabloid published excerpts, painting Daniel as a social climber who manipulated his way into a billionaire's life. Social media buzzed with gossip, memes, and commentary on the epic downfall of the gold-digging husband. Reporters staked out the mansion gates, snapping photos of Daniel whenever he tried to leave. One viral news segment featured an in-depth timeline of Daniel's questionable business dealings, hinting he had exploited Isabella's resources to boost his personal accounts. With Eva now in command, any hidden accounts or shady transactions would likely come to light. Madison watched the spectacle unfold from her tiny apartment, face pale as she scrolled through headlines on her phone. Isabella Vaughn outsmarts greedy husband from the grave. The downfall of Daniel Vaughn, a cautionary tale. Every article hammered home the same theme. Daniel Vaughn was left with nothing. She felt panic twist her stomach. If he's truly penniless, then what happens to me? She tried calling Daniel, but he rarely picked up. When he did, his tone was curt, despondent. He had no time to comfort her dreams of jets and mansions. He was too busy trying to salvage his own reputation. Media vultures circled, and business allies scattered. Old friends of Daniel vanished. In a matter of weeks, he'd gone from an anticipated billionaire heir to a public laughingstock. And ironically, it was all Isabella's doing, her final revenge against the man who had secretly loathed her success. The text arrived late one night. "This isn't what I signed up for. Good luck." It came from Madison. Daniel stared at it, heart pounding in anger. So even Madison is jumping ship now. He called her repeatedly, but the line went straight to voicemail. He grabbed his keys, driving across town to her apartment in a rage. There, in the dimly lit hallway, he found her door wide open. Boxes lined the entrance, half-packed. Madison herself emerged from the bedroom, hauling a suitcase. She froze at the sight of him. "You were just going to leave?" he demanded, voice echoing in the corridor. Her eyes flashed with defiance. "What do you expect, Daniel? You promised me a billionaire's lifestyle and instead, you're public enemy number one. Reporters are hounding me. My job threatened to fire me because of the scandal. All because of your lies." He let out a scornful laugh. "You knew what I was from the start. You stuck around for the money." Her lips quivered. "Yes, I did. And it looks like I'm not getting it. You think I want to watch you spiral into a broke, disgraced afterthought." She shoved past him, suitcase wheels rattling on the wooden floor. Stung, he tried one last plea. "Madison, wait. We can fight this together." She paused, eyes glistening with anger or maybe regret. "Fight what? Eva has everything. Isabella set you up to fail. You're a lost cause, Daniel." With that, she stormed out, disappearing into the night. Daniel stood there in the silent apartment, the emptiness pressing in on him from all sides. He was losing everything: money, power, reputation, and now even the woman he had cast all his hopes on. "Isabella," he thought bitterly, "you've destroyed me." At Vaughn Industries, Eva signed the final paperwork that legally recognized her as the sole holder of the majority shares. Jonathan Pierce stood by, offering quiet counsel. Each stroke of her pen felt weighty, a reminder that her mother had entrusted her with this empire, and also the responsibility to keep Daniel at bay. When the final signature was in place, Eva looked up. "That's it then. It's all done." Jonathan nodded. "Yes. Congratulations, Ms. Vaughn. Your mother would be proud." She gave a tight smile. "Thank you, Jonathan, for everything." Standing, she stretched her arms, feeling both burdened and exhilarated. There was just one last matter: Daniel. She had arranged to meet him at the mansion, her mansion, now, to ensure he was vacating the property. It was a courtesy. She could have just sent security, but a part of her wanted to say a final goodbye in person. That evening, she arrived at the gate, letting herself in. The house was eerily quiet. She found Daniel in the living room, packing personal belongings into boxes. He offered her a stony glance. "Congratulations, sis," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You won." Eva drew a deep breath. "Mom won, Daniel. She planned all of this. I'm just following through." He slammed a box shut. "You don't deserve it." She shrugged off the insult. "Maybe not. But at least I didn't spend years scheming to take it away from her." Daniel sneered. "Enjoy the empire while you can. Sooner or later, someone will come along to take it from you." A flicker of sadness passed over Eva's face. "I'm sorry it had to end this way," she said softly, "but you brought this on yourself. I hope one day you understand that." They regarded each other in silence, two people forever divided by greed and bitterness. Eva finally turned and left, her footsteps echoing in the once grand foyer. Behind her, Daniel was left amid boxes and regrets, the final chord in a symphony of betrayal. Weeks turned into months. Eva embraced her new responsibilities, working tirelessly with a team of capable executives to ensure Vaughn Industries maintained its philanthropic and innovative edge. She oversaw expansions, funded charitable projects in her mother's name, and slowly found her own footing as a leader. The media applauded the new CEO's fresh vision and praised how she honored Isabella's legacy. Daniel, meanwhile, found himself in a downward spiral. With no inheritance, no shares, and no supportive network, he was forced to sell personal items just to pay for legal fees. He moved from the mansion into a modest apartment in a less affluent part of town. The swirl of gossip around him eventually subsided, leaving only pity and scorn in its wake. Sometimes Daniel would wake before dawn, haunted by nightmares of Isabella's mocking eyes. He'd turn on the news, only to see Eva featured in a glowing interview about her latest project or mention of Isabella's unstoppable legacy. And each time, he felt that sting of defeat all over again. One gray afternoon, he sat alone in his dim living room, a half-finished bottle of whiskey on the coffee table. His phone buzzed with a news notification. Vaughn Industries announces new scholarship fund in memory of Isabella Vaughn. He hurled the phone aside, burying his face in his hands. She has the last laugh. She always did. Across town, in a newly renovated office suite, Eva gazed at a portrait of her mother and murmured, "I hope I'm doing right by you." A gentle breeze from the open window ruffled her hair, almost as if Isabella were there, offering silent approval. And so, Isabella Vaughn's ultimate revenge was complete. The empire thrived under the daughter she loved, while the husband who had coveted her fortune lost everything. It was a testament to her unyielding spirit, a final, triumphant checkmate played from beyond the grave. The end.